The point you're making is that essentially people now move where the housing is more affordable. They're not moving where the money is, where the jobs are, where the dynamism is. And that is a huge crimp in the productivity and the energy of the American economy.
I can't stress enough how weird this is. It can seem natural to us, right? Like, oh, you think everybody should be able to live in a wealthy city like San Francisco. What makes you think that? And the answer is basically because that's what America was, right? People moved toward the places that were thriving. And they were not always the same places. If you moved into Ohio in the 1820s, that was a good bet. By the 1840s, it's bleeding population. By the 1890s, it's
happening. I mean, we see big migration to the cities. The cities are bigger now and denser than they've been in the recent past, right?
To some, but there's other areas. It's not all cities. Northwest Arkansas is a thriving place, but the housing prices are rapidly escalating there, and not as many people are moving to that area as could. Wherever you are, the zoning regulations have spread nationwide. People now move to where the housing is cheap. You're likely, if you're advising a kid who's just getting out of high school, whether he should live in San Francisco or in Phoenix, if you're thinking about where are the good jobs going to be, where will you get paid more for doing the same thing? The answer is 100% San Francisco. If you're giving that kid advice, you're better off telling him to go to Phoenix. Because in Phoenix, he can afford to put a roof over his head, even if he's not going to have good opportunity.
But he won't earn as much as he might have done.
He won't.
The economy is not rewarding actual productivity. It's rewarding geography.
It is, and and this is an uncomfortable point for me to make, and I'll make it anyway. It is progressives who have done this. The more progressive a jurisdiction, the more restrictive its housing rules. In California, for every 10 points more a jurisdiction votes for Democrats, the number of housing permits drops by 30%.
It's partly because the Democrats are the party of the wealthy.
Well, they're certainly the party of government rules, right? So they're
and government rules.
They're the party that says, we can fix things. We can save the environment. We can protect our history. We can preserve the character of the community. They believe that government regulation can achieve these things, but they're not looking at the aggregate impact of all of those decisions. And what happens over time is that Americans, the wealthiest and the poorest places in this country, the gap between them was narrowing for all of American history until about 1970. As we put these rules in place, that gap plateaus.
The gap between, what?
The wealthiest and the poorest places in the country. Right? Because people are moving out of the poor places toward the wealthy places. And that's good for everyone. It's good for the people who make the move. It's good for the people who they leave behind in the main too, right? Like we know this about international migration. They're essentially sending remittances back to Alabama, right? That if they're earning a lot in the big city or if they're earning a lot in the new farm that they planted on the frontier, they can afford to support the poor region that they come from. And then it tightens the labor market in those places, which drives up wages, which is good for the people who are still there and have proactively decided they made a perfectly reasonable choice too, which is I want to stay in my home. Maybe I have parents to take care of. Maybe I have family ties. Everybody was winning from this. The richer and the poorer places were on a convergent path. As we've made it prohibitively expensive to move to wealthy places, we've reversed that. And for the first time that we can look at, the richer and the poorer places are now on divergent paths. The gap is growing wider and wider. And if you look around this country, if you visit those towns where people are stuck, where they want to move and they can't, you get some sense of the rage, the frustration, the despair that comes along with being born someplace. And because of that lottery, because you drew a losing lottery ticket in the birth lottery, and you happen to be born in a place whose glory days were behind it, and you are stuck, you cannot leave that place and go someplace better. That is not a good, optimistic mindset to have, right? You're going to look at that situation and you're going to be justifiably enraged. And we can see this in our politics, that those parts of the country are justifiably enraged. They look at the blue progressive islands of wealth and prosperity and they say, you're not letting us in. Right? Like, you don't care about us. You've written us off. You've walled off your cities. You've made it impossible for people like me to move where you are and to share the prosperity that you enjoy. And you've left us behind.